Hey y'all, it's Rachel Joy Barbeau. This is a whole new season, episode 2 of the Joy Starters podcast. As I told you in the last episode, we're playing around with a lot of things, right? Like I'm playing around with microphones and cameras and all of the things and figuring out what works best and what looks best and what sounds best. So as I boom. By the way, also, we don't edit. I don't edit out this stuff. I don't have on my podcast, I don't have a script. And God bless all the podcasts that are scripted. Mine are not scripted. And the things that people have told me they love about my podcast is, hey, you're leaving a prison and you're in the car and you're crying and there's background noise and you're telling us about the experience because if you get too far away from it, you forget it, right? You are on the road, you're doing this, you're having these thoughts. And even people tell me, I was having a conversation this week, like you're all over the place, but you come back and you land the plane and you make your point, you teach something, you do come back and land the plane. None of that is changing. None of that's changing. And I won't change. And that is one thing that made the audio version of the Joy Starters podcast so popular, a top 10% podcast in the world. And now I'm on the Determined Society. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. By the way, I can't sing, but I'm always going to sing in these podcasts. So thank you to Sean French. Thank you to Pat Sitkins. Thank you to the Determined Society. I am just pumped. I'm pumped. I'm pumped. All right. So let me get right to it. First of all, if you are watching this at home and it's in the background and you have the opportunity to take notes, take notes. If you can't, go back and, try to make a mental note if you're driving. I like to listen to podcasts as I'm working around the house. And so just going to tell you a little hack of mine. I always tell people when I go be with my maker to get into my notes because there are notes galore, like notes galore on everything, like my ongoing grocery list, my master to-do list, things that happen when I speak, all sorts of things, ideas I have, content ideas I have, like all the things. Maybe you start a note in your notes app from the things that you learned from podcasts. All right. So what I want to tell you about this week is you're responsible for the future generation. You are responsible for the future generation. We had a Joy Starters meeting last night, which, by the way, the Joy Starters Club is free and open to anybody who wants to join. There's no barriers. You just go to my website, rachelbarbeau.com, hit connect, and you'll see the Joy Starters. You get monthly challenges, text. We have a meeting the third Tuesday of the month at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central, 4:30 Mountain, 3:30 Pacific. Third Tuesday of the month. It's free and open. Sometimes I have famous people like Coach Snyder or famous speakers or coaches or people, financial people to bring you all sorts of information. And sometimes it's me coaching and we are having conversations. And so one of the things that we talked about last night was, and I saw this recently and I just loved it. And it was talking about planting seeds for trees that you'll never sit under. And Lord, I just need to go ahead and get my tissue. Planting seeds for trees you'll never sit under. So good. So good, man. A couple of weeks ago, my friend Kat called me and said, hey, can I meet you at church? And I said, you sure can. So she came with one of her daughters. The other daughter stayed home. She also adopted her sister's son. It's like crazy, amazing. We've been praying for it. Like, wow. But that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. So she came with her daughter, Ava, and Ava wanted to sit in big church with us. And so we are on the second row. I like to sit up front. I've sat in the back. I've sat all the places at church. But I like to sit up front, closer to the action, closer to the altar, closer to all those things. And so at my church, and I respect everybody's opinions. And what I always say on this podcast and just in general is I will never, and I said it in my best-selling book, Relentless Joy, I will never shove this placement of this is just, I'm just telling you, this is one of the things that's going to have to change. So let's just figure it out. Okay. Like okay. Because I just talk with my hands. Maybe I need to move. Okay. Let's just. Okay. Told you it was real. And I also want to inspire you. I want to inspire you to do something that you don't feel qualified to do, that you feel like you're going to hit the microphone and you're trying to figure out where I want to just inspire you to start. And that's why I'm not cutting this part out. I'm not going to edit this part out because I want you to see me screw up, fail, hit the microphone, try to figure out where I need to sit, change the cameras over the season. But the point is I'm doing it. I want to die a doer. And that's what I also said on that Joy Starters meeting, which you need to be there next month, third Tuesday of the month, 6:30 Eastern. You get it in my newsletter. You get it in the Joy Starters app, or excuse me, in the Facebook group. You get that information there. I want to die a doer. Okay. So I want you to take my follies here as inspiration. Okay. For you just to do it afraid, do it when you hit the microphone, do it not knowing if you have the right camera. Just do it. Just start. Stop living on the sidelines. So back to church. I respect everybody and I respect everybody's opinions, but I will never be quiet about my Jesus. And I said in my best-selling book, Relentless Joy, last year, I said, by the end of this book, I said, I don't care if you're far from God, mad at God, you don't have a relationship with God, your church hurt, you believe something else, you don't believe anything. I said, by the end of this book, I hope you think that Jesus was a really rad dude, because he was and he is. Okay. And I laugh and say, I hate calling Jesus a dude, but he was a real dude that was crucified and lived and died for us and swallowed our sins on the cross. So at church, I go to a non-denominational church called Journey. If you're ever in Nassau County, please come visit. Or if you need a church home online, I will drop that link below in the show notes. But I go to a non-denominational church that looks like heaven. And let me tell you about that really briefly. It looks like heaven in the sense that I remember our pastor talking about a couple of years ago, he went to a conference and somebody challenged him and said, if your church it's not diverse and doesn't look like heaven, that's like, you need to check your heart. So he came back and said, hey, I'm going to have a church that looks like heaven. And well, there were some people that left the church and he was like, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. I don't know if he said that, but I think that's probably what he said. But a lot of people did leave the church because they have some racism in their heart, and any amount of racism does not work. So I attend a church that it's pink, purple, black, white. It is awesome. We have an altar where after the second song, they open up the altar. You can go really anytime. You can get on your face. You can pray. People pray with you. We raise our hands. You can be as pious and you can, be as pious and serious as you want, or you can raise your hands and jump up and down, hoop and holler. And I just love our church for that. I love it. So we are at church and it is amazing. Okay. And I'm raising my hands. I'm a weeper. I always tell people like I am a weeper. And I'm weeping because I am joyful, because I'm praising God, because man, this is just wow, right? Like I'm in the presence of the Holy Spirit. So I've had people ask me before, they're like, are you sad? What's going on with you? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I promise you, like these are tears of joy. So I look over and my friend Catherine's daughter, Ava, she's clapping, she's raising her hand, she's like reading her little Bible. And there was a moment where I pulled out my Bible and I was underlining and I had a pen and I saw her open up her Bible and she was like, almost like had a pen, like as if she was trying to write, but had no pen. And I was like, I felt the ping. I always tell you, spirit of openness, listen to the ping. The ping was like, give her your pen. This is a little girl. She's watching people around her. She is a sponge. She is soaking it up. Give her that pen. And so I watched her underline and write in her Bible, which I teach people. This Bible that you have is supposed to be an active living thing. It is. It's so sacred. It is sacred, but write in it. I teach people to write in the Bible where you were, the date you were at the church, underline, and who you were with and what church you were at. Because when somebody gets my Bible, they're going to find all these places and I can see all these years where I was at these places, right? So it was just amazing. Okay, it was amazing. I mean, I just was feeling the Holy Spirit. The service was great. The preaching was great. The songs were great. But right after the second song, I go up to the altar as I do every Sunday that I'm there. And, I want to remind you of this. I want to remind you as we're teaching you about lessons that will affect future generations. When you pray, I hope, and I'd like to teach you that your prayers are just for you. I'd like to hope and believe that your prayers are for other people. Maybe nobody's ever taught you to pray or how to pray or even talk to you about how to pray. I'm going to talk to you about it right now. I want to teach you that your prayers should be for this world, for our leaders, for other people, for the people that have asked you to pray. I have taught this in many different settings, but I used to be the person that would say, oh, yeah, I'll pray for you. And then I'd forget about it. Again, back to the notes. Remember, I'm teaching you things in this podcast. I will put a note, like I have a notes app, note, people ask me to pray for them, or I will just stop and pray right then. I will talk to God in the car, in the shower, wherever I am about what they asked me to pray for. So I go to the altar almost every Sunday, and I'm not going for myself. I'm going to praise God. I'm going to thank him. I'm going to pray for other people. And of course, I pray for my family and the movement and those things. But there's a whole lot of people that are on the list before me. And my prayers are not get rich, get famous. They are make an impact, leave a legacy, plant seeds for trees that I'll never sit under, and to die a doer, and to not sit on the sidelines. Die a doer and don't sit on the sidelines. Oh my gosh. So I'm up there praying, y'all. I'm up there praying, and we have at our church, we have people that will come by and pray over you. And I know some of the people. And so I will turn around and one lady will touch my shoulder and I'll hold her hand, and different people meet me at the altar. Right. And I've met other people at the altar and prayed over them as well. And so one lady has me and I feel her. And then after she left, I felt a hand. I felt a hand in the small of my back. And I was just praying, and I took a little peek. I'm on my knees in front of the altar, kneeled down, and I took a peek behind me. And it was my friend Catherine's daughter, Ava. And I was like, and I look, and it's her, and she's right behind me, and she's touching my back. And then her mother is behind her, touching her back. And I just thought, oh my gracious, my God, the example that we are showing this little girl, right? Like what it looks like to pray without ceasing, what it looks like to be unashamed for God, what it looks like to be joyous. Why can we go to a football game and get jacked at a football game, but we can't get jacked in church, right? And maybe you came from a more pious background, and that is okay. I'm just telling you to be open to all experiences. Like I talked about earlier on this podcast, that I am very inclusive of what anybody believes, but I'm not going to be ashamed of what I believe, right? So I understand everybody different strokes for different folks, different sailboats, different waves, different. I get it, but I'm telling you what brought me joy on this Sunday. And so I turn around, and this is happening, and I'm weeping even more. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, wow. And my friend Catherine smiles at me. She gets up, she goes to sit back down. And the Lord just told me, like, grab her and pray over her. And so I grabbed her and I prayed over her. And I told her, I said, from the top of your head to the bottom of your feet, I pray that the Lord guides you and keeps you, and he protects you, and that he is with you, and he speaks to you, and he gives you God winks and God moments. I pray over your future. I pray over where you go. I pray an army of angels. This is a baby, y'all, a young child. And I am just praying at the top of her head to the bottom of her feet for her cells, for her membranes, for her brain, for her heart, for her experiences, for her life, that God would use this little child that is on fire for God already, right? And it's just a moment, right? Because I have bonus kids, but I do not have biological children. And somebody has said to me a long time ago, they said, Rachel, what you do, you have kids all over the country. These people that you have poured into that look at you like a mama figure. Why did I even put on makeup? And I said, so in that way, you are a mom to many. But I just want to remind you the importance, whether you have kids or not, that there are children that are your friends' children, your coworkers' children, the people of the world, kids of the world that don't have somebody, that don't have parental units, that are either doing what they need to do or in addiction or not there, your neighbor's kids, whoever it may be, the neighborhood kids, right? Maybe you need to go be a big brother or big sister. Maybe you need to figure out a way to mentor, to get in their lives, to volunteer, to give a knowledge and experience that you have. But we are responsible for the next generation. And so we go back to our seats. It's amazing. The rest of the service is amazing. We go out. Her mom asked me to sign her Bible. I did. I shared with her how I wrote in my Bible, as I mentioned. And later on that day, my girlfriend, Kat, posted a picture, and I didn't know she took it, of us at the altar. And it was just, yeah. Yeah. And she was like, I hope that was okay that I posted that. And I was like, yes, of course, because it's not about me. And I want to share this with the world. That's why I felt compelled to share this on this podcast today, that we are responsible for other people's kids. We are responsible for the children of the world, and we are responsible to not die that we should die, we should die a doer, and we should be planting seeds for trees that will never sit under. God, it's so freaking good. So good. We should, man. And I'll never forget that Sunday. And forever in my heart, I'm responsible in a smallest part of a way for Catherine's daughter. I'm responsible to keep pouring into her. She homeschools. She's the best mama. And I said, anytime they want to come over here and I can show them my plants, we can use that as a homeschooling experience. I can teach them about broadcasting. I can teach them about the things I do on a podcast, how I set up for it, how I do my newsletter, how I run a brand, how I created a movement. I said, we can make all this school. And she was like, oh my gosh, I would love that. I was like, yes, let's do it. But I, in my heart, from a faith perspective, am responsible what happened for stewarding her daughter, because she will grow up and she will look at my social media, and she will grow up and she will watch me around her mother as children do. They're sponges. And I am responsible for her in some small way. And you may say, you're crazy, Rachel. I'm not responsible for somebody else's kids. Yes, you are. If you care about the future, if you care about the next generation, you're responsible for how you conduct yourselves, and you are a role model in your own way. Sure, I believe it. There were points and times in my life where I wasn't, but I'm at a place in time in my life where I want to be a good example for other people's kids, for my kids. I want them to be proud of me. I'll tell you this one brief story before we end this podcast, and that is I went up. I've spoken to over 80 colleges with I'm Changing the Narrative, and I had quite possibly the sweetest and most precious and most special to me, and they're all special, speaking engagement this summer, and that was to my son, my bonus son. His name is Brooks. He's at the Merchant Marine Academy, and he plays football there. And, first of all, it was the opportunity came up, and I said, hey, do you want this? Because the last thing that I want, Brooks, is for you to be embarrassed and be like, oh, it's my stepmom, like cringe. And he's like, no. So we spend some time together beforehand. He knows what I speak on. He's heard me speak before. And then he told me a little bit about his brotherhood and what that was like going to the Merchant Marine Academy, and what how hard it was and how it brought them all together. And so he gave me some important context. Well, I spoke for 40 minutes and the meeting went 2.5 hours. It was one of the most impactful meetings I've ever been a part of, because guys stood up, took their mask off, and shared. There was not a dry eye in the room. There was a player on that team, and I'll never name names, that even came up, and this is a trigger warning. I always try to give trigger warnings, that came up and said, Coach, you don't know this, but I was getting ready. Trigger warning. Please pause this. If you are thoughts of self-harm trigger you, or thoughts of suicide trigger you, just giving you that. But this player stood up and they were saying all sorts of things: family stuff, girl stuff, faith stuff, mental health stuff. I'm in therapy. I mean, it was so beautiful. And I'm a sacred space holder. I'm not a speaker anymore. I don't call myself that anymore. I'm a sacred space holder. That's what I do. I bring people to these vulnerable spots and I hold sacred space for them. But this player stood up and he said, Coach, you don't know this. It was a longer story than this, but I'm going to give you the bullet points. He said, but I was going to take my own life. And he said, I was up there. I was going to do it. I had the means to do it. And he said, then I realized that I had not told my loved ones that I loved them, and I had not said goodbye. And he said, so I came back down. I think it was on a hill. And he said, I was going to go up and do it again. He said, I was sitting there. I was getting ready to do it. And he said, you didn't even know me. And he said, all of a sudden in my lap, my phone went off and you introduced yourself and you said, hi, I'm Coach so-and-so. Again, not giving coaches names. Oh, I'm a vault of a million secrets, if y'all only knew. And he said, I'm Coach so-and-so. And he said, I'd love to talk to you. I've seen your film. I've heard about you. I know you're, a wonderful young man. I'd like to talk to you about coming to play football at the Merchant Marine Academy. And this player the coach. He said, you didn't know it, but you saved my life. And I whipped my head around to the coach, and he was crying. And Blair was crying. Everybody was crying in the room. And it was just that kind of meeting. And I shared this story to say that I'm responsible, right? Like, we are responsible. And I don't want her daughter one day to look at my social media or whatever I'm doing and go, ooh, cringe. Same way I didn't want my son to come out of that meeting and go, ooh, cringe, like, ooh, God, it's my bonus mom. Oh, God. And he didn't. And it was amazing. And I want you to start thinking about and having that generational mindset of forward, that you're responsible for the next generation. You're responsible to plant trees that you will never sit under, plant seeds that will grow into trees that you'll never sit under. Boom shakalaka. Boom shakalaka. That was heavy and beautiful and took a few turns, but I hope you really felt the lesson in that and what I was trying to teach you. And I hope it opens your eyes and gives you a spirit of openness that you're responsible. And it starts making you look at your friends' kids and your neighborhood kids and your own kids and your step kids and whoever it is in the neighborhood, in the community. And you start looking at them and saying, I have some responsibility for them. And also looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, how am I carrying myself? How am I living my life? Am I going to die a doer, or am I going to die on the sidelines? Am I going to die saying I'm going to do it, saying I'm going to change, saying I'm going to whatever? I heard a saying one time that said, you said you would die for your children, but will you live for your children? Will you make the changes that you need to for your children? Oh, man, I felt that so deeply. Will you break generational curses for your children? And this is for you, even if you ain't got no kids, right? Because surely you got a nephew or a niece or a neighbor kid, and the world needs you to be healthy. The world needs you to be high functioning, and if you're not high functioning right now, that's okay. But the world needs you to be at your best, not just surviving, but thriving. And I want that for you. I want that for you. All right. Lastly, I want to share 3 amazing, cool things that just happened to me over the past 2 weeks. And I'm all about sharing good news, joyful news. 1, 2 people that were in a course of mine a couple of years ago. And it was a course that I was set to do, a recorded course. Nobody was ever going to have any interaction with each other. It was recorded. The price point was recorded. That was it. That was all it was going to be. Well, I heard God tell me weeks leading up to this course, do it live. And I argued with God. I was like, but God, no, I did not price it for that. No, I cannot do this 6 weeks live. I argued and argued and argued in my head and my heart. And finally I relented. Well, these 2 people met in that course. And this past week, Jill and Dave got engaged. Yes, I am this tiny bit responsible for these 2 humans meeting and getting engaged. And it is a fact. I wrote about it in my book. I will never get over that. I live this life where I'm in constant awe. Like, I live a life of awe, and there's power in awe. And I will never not be awed by that. Just telling you. All right. Also, I had another really great thing happen. And that is, I introduced somebody to my book agent, and my book agent decided to represent them. And so I'm a part of somebody's book journey. Again, the smallest, tiniest part, just using the power of connection, the power of community. And this person now has a book deal. I don't want to shout them out here. I want to let them tell the world that, because I didn't get their permission. But yeah, I felt like I got a book deal all over again. And by the way, I'm working on book number 2. I can't reveal the title yet, but we have the cover photo, and it was inspired by Tina Turner, and I cannot wait, and I'm working on it, and it's coming. I just want to tell you that. And the third really cool thing, lots of cool things have happened, but the third really cool thing happened that I hope you're inspired by is I go to the farmer's market on Saturdays. I take my doggie, my geriatric dog, Buddy Joe, and he rides in the stroller, and I go as much for him as I do for myself. But I go to amble and ramble and talk to people. It's soul care, which is deeper than self-care. I do all of those things. I go to the farmer's market to fill the cup of my soul, and to also get awesome wares and food and all that. And so my girlfriend, Crystal, met me there, and we were just kind of talking and we were drinking our coffee and, and walking around. And we saw this tent with a girl and I'm going to put her link below as well, who had a shirt that said Pretty Girls Read. Well, so we go right over there and the shirts are soft and we start having a conversation with her. And she's so sweet. And she's just moved and she's an artist and she's so proud of her work. I always keep a copy of my book, just one to give away. If you've listened to the podcast before, you know that. So I whipped it out and I was like, hey, I'd love to give this to you. And we took a picture and it was sweet and we all connected and it was great. So I wear that shirt yesterday at the very last minute. My favorite, if you're ever on Amelia Island, Story and Song, independent bookstore. It's a community. It's amazing. I went to an author, a book release, a book signing yesterday. And I was so excited. I decided to go last minute again for soul care just over lunch. And I wore the shirt. Okay. I wore the shirt. And right as soon as I walked in, the people at the bookstore were like, where'd you get that shirt? Oh my gosh, we should carry that here. And I was like, you know what? I was like, let me connect you to the artist. So I connected them to the artist. They're going to carry her stuff in their store and it's going to help her, y'all. And all these things, it's not about me. I don't share them to brag about myself. I share them to tell you about the power of connection. I could have been the person that just said, oh, yeah, thanks, bye, and walked upstairs to the book signing. No, I said, you know what? Let me give you the artist's name because I know that she would be so appreciative of that and it would be cool and rad for everybody, right? And so the power of connection, two people getting engaged because I listened to God and I did the course live, and somebody getting a book deal because of the power of connection. And they did the work, obviously. I just had to get in the tiniest part. And then wearing an awesome shirt, connecting with her at the farmer's market, and then connecting her with this bookstore that's going to sell her stuff and make her money and fulfill her purpose and help her grow and touch and affect more people to inspire girls to read. Pretty Girls Read. Pretty Girls Read. I should have worn it today, but I'll drop her link below as well. I love you guys. Last thing, you probably seen them. I'm wearing my patches, Liberty, Ignite. I am wearing Focus, and I am wearing Victory today. I've got my patches on. They help with everything from anxiety to weight loss to lowering cortisol to sleeping better. I got them for all the things. I fell in love with them. Somebody sent them to me, so much so that I now rep them. So I'm going to drop my link below. If you want to try them, they have a money back guarantee, 30 days. Try them. What do you have to lose? Zero supplements in these, zero drugs in these. These just speak to the brain, like Braille for the brain. Love you guys. We will see you next week. Hope you've enjoyed my storytelling. And I hope more than anything that you die a doer and that you plant seeds that will turn into trees that you will never sit under. Love you guys.